Welcome to Guided. I'm your host, Jodi Reynosa, helping you navigate your divine journey. And with me today is Maggy Whitehouse. Wow, has she had an amazing life. Maggy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. I love it. And it's Sunday afternoon, so forgive me, I'm in the whole shebang.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We were just talking about before the show, you were actually doing a service. And
In the
tell us a
garden.
little bit about your what you're wearing and how significant that is a little bit before we go into your bio.
Okay, well, this is in blue, which is Bariatic blue, which represents the heavens, which represents spirit. And in Kabbalah, that represents coming out of the tribe at the level of spirit, which is the third gospel in the four gospels. That's the Gospel of Luke. And the Gospel of Luke is the one that is full of stories of the stranger, the other, the women, and how valuable they are. And I've
Beautiful.
also got this beautiful little thing I bought in Toledo in Spain, which has got the Star of David, the Christian cross, and the Crescent of Islam, because the system of Kabbalah that I've studied and taught for years is based on a time in Spain called La Convivencia, the coming together of souls, when
Ooh,
the people of the three faiths, the mystics of the three faiths, worked together in the Middle Ages and studied together and taught together.
that is
So
so
it's all
lovely.
relevant. And the dog collar, which I don't know if you call it that in the USA, do they?
I've never heard of that before, but that's interesting.
Haven't you? The clerical collar. In England, it's called the dog collar. And there's
Okay.
a lovely legend which has there's no way of proving this at all. And it may be that it isn't true at all, but it's one of those stories that should be true. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yes. Tell
I
it, please.
don't know if it happened and I don't know if it didn't happen, but I know that the story is true. I love that saying. But my bishop told me when I was resisting the idea of ordination, because I found it really, really challenging, he said that the dog collar, as we call it here, was originally the collar of Anubis, the Egyptian god, who weighed the heart of the dead against a feather. And if the
Oh,
heart was as light as a feather, you went to the right part of the heavens. And if the heart was heavy, you didn't have the level of spirit to get to the right level of the heavens. So he said the only job of a minister is to lift hearts.
oh, that's beautiful.
And that
That's
was
really
the
beautiful.
turning point for me. And I just thought, because I'm a stand-up comedian as well, and
Yes.
I thought, yeah, I'd love to do that. I mean, let's face it, don't we need our hearts lifted?
Oh, absolutely, especially in this day and age, right? And I'm sure people have been saying that throughout the ages, in this day and age, right? Well, okay, let's get into your bio because it's beautiful. Okay, so Maggy Whitehouse, as we have her on the show, is an independent sacramental priest, as she just mentioned, a stand-up comedian, which I love, and of course, making hearts lighter, a broadcaster and an author, and specialist in Judeo-Christian mysticism, particularly Bible interpretation for interfaith. She is a radio presenter and former BBC journalist, a travel documentary presenter and producer for Carlton TV, has acted as host moderator for BBC's religion and ethics message boards, and was producer of BBC's now defunct holistic health and spirituality website. Whitehouse is the author of books on Judaism, Christianity, and faith, including 4 on the Judaic mystical system known as Kabbalah, as we're going to talk about today. She was co-founder and consultant editor of the holistic magazine Tree of Life. Whitehouse is also literary agent for the British novelist Nora Loftus. I didn't realize that. So very neat. And as far as comedy, you trained as a stand-up comedian in 2012 at the age of 56. Wow, see, it's never too late to do what you love and want to do,
Never.
and just to kind of explore. You are unique for the no holds bar interpretation of religion and priesthood, and is now a professional comic gigging throughout the UK. That's really neat. In 2014, she took her 1-hour show, The Maggy Whitehouse Experience, to the Edinburgh Fringe. She was a finalist in the 2015 UK Funny Women Awards. I love that. In 2018, she joined the forces with 2 Anglican clergy, Reverend Ravi Holy of the Y Benefice, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but, and
It's
Reverend
fun.
Kate Bruce, So RAF chaplain to form White Collar Comedy. Oh, that's great. The three will be performing in Edinburgh Fringe from the 1st to the 10th. So that was back in 2019.
Yeah, and we can't go this year, of course.
Because of COVID, of course,
Mm-hmm.
right? I love that you are pursuing so many different things and you are making hearts lighter. And this is beautiful. And tell us your new book that just came out, which I was up until the wee hours of the night. We're talking 3 a.m. my time, because I was just so enthralled with the beauty of that book. And it's very deep. I mean, there's so much to it. It's really beautiful. Yes, tell us a little bit about that. So, well, first of all, the name of the book. Go ahead, Maggie, and show us the. Yes, it's a beautiful cover. Beautiful.
It's Kabbalah and Healing, and I sort of resisted writing it for a long time before I was ordained. When I was many years ago, I didn't ever want to really write about my own journey particularly, but it just came so obvious. I started blogging when I became a comedian, and I have had this incredible life of miracles, of extraordinary things happening. And about 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a medically incurable cancer, and I've been completely clear for 3 years, and my consultant hates me because I used a lot of Kabbalistic principles and also good diet and shamanism and many other ways, and I've been completely clear now, which is technically impossible. So I thought, as I was getting better, I thought, well, maybe it's time to drop those boundaries and start saying, look, I've been there. I've really been there. I can't promise that I can help you heal you, but I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you said, you know, was it consultant or practitioner hated you? Because, you know, oftentimes with allopathic medicine, they want to explain the different reasons, you know, why you have something or a certain disease state based on their type of research. But then when you use alternative medicine or alternative things, or even spiritual things like you did, it's unexplainable. They can't explain miracles.
No, and it is a miracle. It really is. And there was a point, there's a notice up in the reception waiting room at the place in Exeter, the hospital that I was attending, which was from the British Dietary Association or Dietetics Association, about saying, don't worry about organic food, eat what you want, McDonald's are fine, take no notice of any of these vitamin stuff and things like that. And I sat there and I looked at it and I got so cross, Jodi. And I went home and spent some time, which was probably very good for me, because being cross sort of is better than being depressed, which I was at the time. And I spent 6 days researching every single claim on that and wrote a 7-page dossier, which I gave to the consultant, about saying, this is questionable, that is wrong, that is far too simplistic, that is clearly out of balance. I think he just filed it, but it gave me some fun, because I'm all for complementary, you know, let's work with everything you need. Absolutely. It took me quite some time to work out exactly why I had contracted what I had. And it also took me a while to do all the processes for the healing that I needed. And I needed chemotherapy in the meantime, or I would have died. Because I didn't have enough time to do the work. So I'm very grateful for that. But they made it quite clear at the time that they could just buy me more time.
Interesting.
They bought me more time.
I'm sure that you gave that, you know, whether it's doctor or that group of doctors, that hospital, you know, they pause to at least think, hopefully, you know, like there's something different, you know, there's something that we need to look at. And I think that the audience should know that you also utilized all your resources. So you still did chemotherapy, but you also utilized spirit. So yes, all of that combined helped you heal.
Yeah, I found that I had a death wish.
Interesting. Wow.
Which manifested as a sort of low-grade depression, which I'd had for so long I didn't even notice it. and I had a form of blood cancer. It was actually in the lymphatic system, so that was about what should have been protecting me actually attacking me. It wasn't attacking me, it was gathering up all my problems and putting them in lumps for me to deal with. So you go, and I literally did ask for it, because we moved to Devon in southwest of England, which is the most beautiful place on the planet apart from Montana or Colorado.
Yeah.
Or maybe Canada. But anyway, you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
really,
that
really
sounds
lovely.
lovely.
And I went walking on Dartmoor 6 weeks after we got here, and I was aware that I was full of resentments and angers and shame and griefs. And I thought, you could have done more work on yourself. And I literally went down on my knees on the moor and I said, God, clear me out.
Ooh.
Clear me out of this trash that I am carrying.
That gave me chills.
And 6 weeks later, guess what? The first lump arrived. So,
oh wow, that's so powerful.
Be careful
so
what you
powerful.
ask for. You may get it.
Yes, absolutely. But let's talk about the death wish. Okay, so deep down, and it's in our subconscious, we may have that death wish, but we don't realize it. And so it's manifesting in a physical form. So we pause, we slow down, and we look at all those, like you said, the shame, the resentment, the anger, and then it shows up in something physical. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm still researching it really Kabbalistically, but I think there's sort of 3 levels of death wish. There's the just the, oh God, life is so hard, I can't be bothered. Oh God, it's just too hard. And that is something that may be temporary, but we call it a death wish because it's turning you against the light. You're not open to the idea of grace flowing. And it's usually caused by training at the ego level and I can't remember what the words are, the neurons in the brain, the neural pathways in the brain that are most used are the ones of disappointment or
programming,
resentment or something like that. But if that goes on and on, it seems to me, and I'm not a medical practitioner in any way, shape or form, but it seems to me through the people I've met over the years that it can eventually start to manifest as something perhaps a little bit chronic. In my case, it was just restless foot syndrome.
Okay.
But there was just something going on and I was feeling a little bit weird. And then I didn't do anything about it. And it just seemed to get better, bigger and bigger and bigger, until suddenly I had to dive in and say, okay, what's going on here? Because I can't prove it, but Kabbalah says that the soul is made up from what you can actually examine your own soul from your astrology. Your Mars, your Jupiter and your Sun meld together, tells you the timbre, the color of your soul in this lifetime.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love doing it for people because my husband's an astrologer, which of course is nothing that the bishop. Unfortunately, I have a very good bishop, a very understanding bishop. Anyway, but so we will look at people and sort of say, this is where you need to be. You need to be working from your soul, because the ego is the moon sign. It's who you think you are. Your sun sign is who you actually are, and your soul is who you came here to be.
Now, the North Node is typically your mission and purpose.
It is, yes. Yeah. And the soul is actually about who you came to be here to be, to do the mission.
Right. So
yeah, I mean, my North Node is Sagittarius. So
mine too.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes.
Well, you can explain that then, because I'm not a very good astrologer.
Well, what I've researched as far as the North Node being in Sagittarius is it is looking at the macro level of the kind of like the healer, the sage, the wisdom, and putting it into action, putting it into form. So it's basically what you're already doing.
Well, that's not for that. But I didn't do it to start with in my life, or for a very long time. But my soul is made up from Aquarius, Taurus, and Leo. So I'm
Okay.
supposed to be unusual, stable, and able to lead. Whereas my moon is in Scorpio, and I live most of my life in my moon, because most of us do. Very
Mm.
few of us actually really get to the sun sign, certainly until we're grown up. And the moon, the Jesuits had a saying, give me a child until he is 7 and I will give you the man. Because the neural pathways in the brain that are part of this part of the amygdala, I can never pronounce it, are
Yes.
fully formed by the age of 7. So you don't ever have to think a new thought. From that point, your life will operate perfectly easily on automatic, but it will just continue to operate the way you were trained as a child, or the way you learned as a child. And mine was Scorpio. I was the child of a woman with agoraphobia and mental health issues, and not an absent father, but he traveled the world a lot. I'm very grateful to both of them. My mother's a talented writer, and my father pursued steam engines all around the world and had so many adventures, and inspired me to have adventures. But it wasn't a happy marriage, and I was trying to be I was codependent, basically. My brother was away at boarding school, and it was so much easier for me to stay locked down into this Scorpio of, oh God, everybody's against me, and staying in my own little cave in my own depression. Scorpio sun is brilliant. Scorpio moon is not a good place to have your moon. So it was really important for me to grow. It's important for all of us to grow from the moon to the sun, because in Kabbalah it teaches with this wonderful diagram here that your moon's there, your sun's there. That is the gateway to spirit coming down here. So if you're not in your sun sign, you're actually voluntarily or accidentally or subconsciously closing the door to grace.
Yes. And you talk about in your book, you talk about how there's almost like this cat flap, or this almost like portal from the earth level to the spirit level, and if that's blocked in any way, then you're not getting the inspiration and the spiritual downloads that you need to grow.
There's 2 cat flaps in us. There's one in what you call the gonadic chakra, or the sacral chakra, which is the gut, where our gut feeling. That's where our body speaks to us, and if it's well and balanced, we hear it and we get the gut feeling, which is, we're not safe about that. But of course, according to our diet or our training, we either ignore our gut feeling, or our bodies get addicted, in my case, to chocolate. And they'll just yell, I want more chocolate. And there's the other one, which is sort of around the throat chakra, sort of the throat to third eye, which is the part of us that is open to grace. I call the soul, which is this part here, the kiss between heaven and earth, because if you've got access to your soul, it's just like you're going like that the whole time.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. The kiss to heaven.
Kiss between heaven and earth.
The kiss between heaven and earth. And you know what's so interesting? I was listening to the medical medium last night, and we've all heard that the gut is like the second brain, but he also says the thyroid is like another brain. So that's interesting that you bring that parallel. So you have the gut, which is, the first like little portal, almost the cat flap, to
that way or that way. You send information in either direction. You either receive information or offer it.
Yeah, to almost like the lower chakras. And then you have you have your 5th chakra, or your throat chakra, and that's the communication to the higher realms, and that's like your thyroid. So it's like the 2 brains, the gut to the lower and the thyroid to the upper realms. That's so fascinating to me.
Cancer I had manifested first in the throat.
Oh, wow.
And that was years and years of not having the courage to speak my truth, not being able to speak up, not being able to say, no, you do not do that to me.
Right. Oh,
so basically I wasn't, my poor mom, bless her, with agoraphobia, wasn't able to protect me when I was a child. My father was away a lot. So I learned that I was not protected.
Right.
And that, as a very low grade death wish, is okay, but it just went on and on and on and on. And I was a journalist in the 1970s, which was not politically correct, let's say. And there were quite a few incidents where if I'd had self-esteem, if I'd learnt it, I would have very rightly said, no, do not do that. Do not behave that way. But I didn't.
Yeah. And learning those boundaries. Oh, yeah, I understand. Now, I just realized for our audience who they don't know about Kabbalah And we're just assuming they do, right? We should kind of step back. So let's rewind. So Kabbalah, and you explain in your book a little bit, it's usually something that men in the Jewish religion have to be over 40 to kind of delve into, and it's the mystic traditions in the Jewish religion, really. So Maggie, kind of take us through Kabbalah.
Well, it's an oral tradition, which is a bit of a pain, really, because you can't really write books about it, which I do. You're meant to meet and discuss, because the point of it is that it updates for every generation. Oh. It's an oral tradition that adapts and allows, but it's got these two wonderful diagrams to make sure it doesn't become Chinese whispers, and they become a kind of language. My husband's a Kabbalist too, and he and my bishop and my best friend and I can actually talk in almost like a different language, because we're using aspects of the tree to explain things to each other, which is really absolutely lovely. But in a nutshell, Kabbalah is the spaces between the words in the Bible.
Oh, I love that.
Because if you think about music is formed by the spaces between the notes.
Right.
And the thing about the Bible is it's a really fairly nasty book if you read it literally. But you were never meant to read it literally. We weren't intended to read it at all. Back in Jesus's day, 99% of people were what we call illiterate. And the 1% generally could make a mark that signed their name because there wasn't anything to read.
Yeah, and the Sadducees and Pharisees would, talk about it.
Yeah, the scribes would read anything for you. There wasn't anything to read. So you learnt by hearing something in the synagogue and then discussing it. And you would say, yeah, but how does that work for now? How does that work for now? And you'd look at the story maybe of Abraham. We only really started talking about things like the law of attraction and the fact that we co-created our reality about after the Second World War. It really didn't happen that much before. Obviously, there were shamans and very wise people, but this is really out of the bag now. But you go back to the Bible and you go, okay, where is this secret hidden in the Bible? And it's so clear. Once you know what you're looking for, there's a lovely bit where, and if I can go back to God at some point, it would be really nice, because there's all the different names for God, which are aspects of the divine, which makes the Bible makes so much more sense. But there's this bit where the Lord, that's Yahweh, the aspect of the divine that represents the law of karma, because Yahweh only came into existence when humanity descended to earth from Eden. Before then it was the Elohim, then it was Yahweh Elohim, and then it became Yahweh. And Yahweh is the breath of life, and it's law of cause and effect. That is that part of the divine, because the first words every single human being say when they're born are Yahweh. You go, and the last words you say are when you die. And it's so as soon as you're born, as soon as you're being, you're going to not be at one point, because that's the way what goes around comes around. You're born, you die. So there's that aspect of the divine. So that aspect is saying to Abraham, I will give to you all the land that you can perceive. And it's usually taken literally as, I will give you all the land for your cattle to graze on.
Right.
To you and your children forever. But then let's look at it allegorically. I will give you everything you can perceive, everything you can see, what you focus on. So from now on, whatever you focus on, I will give to you.
Creating your reality.
Creating your reality.
Right.
So that's not a way that Kabbalah would have been interpreted 100 years ago, but it is exactly correct for it to be interpreted now. People will probably go, what do you mean correct? Kabbalah has been kept safe in the Jewish faith for a long, long time. It sort of broke out in the 16th century with Christian mystics and the coming of the printing press, but it sort of got closed back in again. But it came out again in about the 1970s, and it's really out now. And there's lots and lots of different kinds of Kabbalah groups, and they'll probably all disagree with each other, just like every spiritual and holistic people did. You're wrong! They're not wrong. You've got to find the one that suits you. That's all. And the one that I teach, and I have got in trouble for being a woman and being ordained And lots of people, there's comments on my YouTube channel saying, a woman can't teach Kabbalah, underneath of a video of a woman who is clearly teaching Kabbalah. So I'm
it's
going to
fascinating.
I'm always going to do it differently.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is you intertwine these different spiritual teachings because you're an ordained minister, you're a woman, and yet you're teaching Kabbalah as well. So I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. Well, one of my great heroes is Father Richard Rohr from Albuquerque, the founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And bless him, he did me loveliest testimony for the book. I'm so grateful. Thank you. And I've met him a few times and studied with him. And he teaches that the perennial tradition is the perennial tradition. It's the truth. It's the ultimate truth. And all the faiths and all the other ways of addressing it are just different roads to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Kabbalah particularly because of these diagrams, and because it's the parent of tarot, it's the parent of astrology, it's the parent of human design. Everything fits with it. Mm-hmm. And the Jacob ladder there is actually almost exactly in the same as design as DNA.
Exactly. Isn't that fascinating? I love that.
Yeah, and this was developed in the 11th century. They didn't know anything about DNA. Yeah. But they did know how the patterns of the universe worked. And the universe works on pure mathematical patterns. Mm-hmm. And we humans are so arrogant, we don't think we fit in the patterns, but we do.
Wow. Yeah. And Nikola Tesla, he knows so much about these. He knew so much about these things. And I think tried to disseminate a lot of things and was scoffed at. Yet the CIA, took the secret Tesla papers because they knew something, was significant about what he knew and taught. So,
the goal is always freedom.
Yes.
The goal of working in any tradition is to be free. And we need a lot of that right now. And the more people who can say, this will keep you free, no matter what the outside circumstances.
Yes. Now, you talked a little bit about resistance to being ordained. Tell us a little bit about that. And then also the synchronicity with finding Psalm 118 throughout your journey.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. Well, it started when I got married. I didn't get married until I was 32. All sorts of resistance and having a repeated same relationship with different men. It seemed like it was different relationships, but it was always with commitment phobes. Mm-hmm. Because I was a commitment phobe. Mm-hmm. But I got selected to present a documentary for independent television in the United Kingdom after I wrote a book about China, which is a whole different topic. But I had to go to China and be the presenter and producer of a couple of documentaries. And I was so out of my comfort zone that my defenses went down. And the sound recordist on the shoot fell in love with me, bless him. And on day 9, without even having kissed me, asked me to marry him.
Wow.
And there was some beautiful synchronicity there, and that somebody had given me a Sony Walkman with a cassette recorder in it with a song in it, which I'd never heard before. And I happened to play that the following morning while I was working out the shooting schedule. And it basically said, stand up on a cold, dear, clear blue morning. Are you still free? Can it be? While you see a chance, take it, find romance. And something just went bang. And I thought, okay, this is it. Anyway, Henry and I got married, but a year after we were married, he died from cancer.
Oh.
And when he was ill, there were other miracles, so many miracles. We got married in the Seychelles at the cathedral in Mahe in the Seychelles. And that was a complete accident, but it was wonderful. And we were given a Bible by the Archbishop of the Indian Ocean. You see, I'm a liability at dinner parties. I really am nobody. Anyway, so when Henry got taken ill, I went to the Bible and opened it at random because I'd heard that was, it's the kind of thing you do, and put my finger on a page, and it was Psalm 118, and the line was, I shall not die, instead I shall live to praise the Lord my God. And I thought that meant Henry, but of course it didn't. It meant me. It meant I would survive this. I would come through this. And it was at Henry's deathbed that I was told by a hospital chaplain that he wasn't going to heaven because he didn't believe in Jesus. Oh. And that was the point. I'd been an armchair Christian up till then. I'd never really thought about it, just turned up at Christmas, and a bit like St. Augustine saying, God grant me chastity, constancy and patience, but not yet. And when the chaplain said that, I just sort of threw the whole Christianity thing out of the window, because it just seemed so unfair that I'd signed on the right dotted line, but Henry, who was a better man than me, didn't get to heaven. And things like that bring it home, they make you think.
Yes.
And that's what I always say when I do a church service is, I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I am here to make you think. Because I want you to think. I want you to make your own decisions, not the decisions you were trained in. Anyway, so that, so I didn't think about that psalm anymore, really, until I married again. I married a Jewish guy. He was the guy who got me into Kabbalah, because he was at the end of his rope from Judaism, just like I was at the end of my rope from Christianity. And he was discovered Kabbalah, and because we were husband and wife, we started studying it together. And once we'd learned enough that we got back on our ropes, we split up and moved on. I was pretty sore then, because, well, I don't like being dumped. Nobody likes being dumped, do they?
Right.
Anyway, and I went with my mother to Evensong the week afterwards, and I opened my hymn book, and a piece of paper fell out, and it was Psalm 118, and somebody had underlined the lines, I shall not die, instead I shall live to praise the Lord my God. And then the third time was when I had my diagnosis and was resisting chemo, and I went on a retreat to some Franciscan nuns in a monastery in North Devon, and I would get up in the morning for the Angelus and Lauds at 5 o'clock and go and sing with them, and then spend the rest of the day in a retreat. And on the very last morning, one of the sisters, who was Swedish, quite often got some of the lines out of order, and she sang a line out of order, and the other nuns stopped dead and said, no, out of order. And guess what the line was? I shall not die, instead I shall live to praise the Lord my God. And I just thought, okay.
That, when I read that, I honestly started tearing up. That was just, that really got me. Because here I'm picturing all of these people in a choir, all these sisters in a choir, and then she just happens to blurt that line out. And I'm thinking, there is just no way that those just aren't linked synchronicities, and those are beautiful messages just for you.
Yeah.
You know?
As in, wake up, woman, wake up, woman, wake up, woman. Yes.
Oh, that's just so beautiful. So for you, when you finally were like, okay, I've got to listen here, what did that mean for you?
It meant understanding that everything that happened was for my own good.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was work that could be done and needed to be done. I was also on something known as my second Saturn return at 58.
Oh, yes.
Which was, and that's a time when you can volunteer to go if you want. There are several points in your life when there are red flag times, and if you're fed up with everything, you can say, okay, I'm out of here. And so I was being given an option, you can get out of here, because at that point I'd had quite a lot of resistance to my teaching Kabbalah, and I'd made some silly mistakes and said some daft things, and I just wasn't mature enough perhaps, and I was very sore about that. And I realized I had to go right down deep and dirty into myself again and sort this stuff out, finally sort this stuff out, and find out what my hatreds were and what my resentments were and what my shame was, because I was a trained healer into traditions and I was an ordained minister. What was I doing getting cancer? I'm supposed to be
the poster child, right? for everything good. Yeah, it doesn't always work that way. In fact, I think the healers and I can get hit the hardest, especially when it comes to Saturn. Oh, but I also, when I was reading those particular parts, I also kept thinking with that scripture, it was like allowing you to see a new way of life for yourself, a new way of living.
Yes.
And how beautiful that you were getting that message and that new opportunity. And also for all of us, because I was applying that scripture to myself too. And there's always those opportunities in our lives, in our week, in our day. And I know the Course in Miracles talks about there's a holy instant where we can have throughout the day a time to renew ourselves, renew our thinking even.
Yeah.
I remember just the other day, I just kept having this anxiety, and I just kept thinking, it's my thoughts. It's the scripting in my thoughts. And I just said a little prayer, and I just said, I I need some help here. Like it's this scripting here. And I keep thinking that things are uncertain when, you know what? No. And I just shifted to gratitude, and instantly things started shifting. So it was that holy instant where I had that shift, and it was that almost symbolism of resurrection and living again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my case, I was thinking, well, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? And everything I needed was here. The guy who had introduced us to Devon, and we decided to move down here, I went to see him because he does kinesiology and EFT, and I was looking for guidance. My bishop sort of said, would you stop running around and just sit down and let it come to you, please? Because I was...
Yeah, interesting.
But this guy, John, just said to me, you need to see this woman, you need to see this woman, and you need to work on that, and you need to work on that. So I just obeyed and went off. And the first person I saw was effectively a witch. She's the Dartmoor shaman. Her name's Susie Crockford. And nowadays she and I do a podcast together called Wise Women, the Vicar and the Witch, which is wonderful because we talk about how our traditions meet in the middle.
Oh, it's so interesting.
We have quite a lot of arguments as well, but what we do, and Susie takes you right down into the darkness and retrieves parts of your soul, or shows you where parts of your souls are. So I went to see her.
Soul retrieval
got much worse.
Okay, so like soul retrieval.
But then I went.
In shamanism, there's a ritual called soul retrieval. So it's like when you go through trauma, or there's certain wounding that happens. In shamanism, there's a belief that your soul's fragmented. So it's a way to integrate your soul into wholeness again.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And Susie just brought stuff up, which made me much, much worse. So then I went to the other lady who was called Kathy, who took me on a sort of in-depth meditations to find these wounds that were preventing the soul from coming back. And between those two extraordinary women whom I saw for a year and a half, I just sort of rebuilt my soul.
Beautiful.
And appreciation was one of the major things, and I still do this, except for Sundays. I take Sundays off. Sunday is a Sabbath, but 6 days a week, first thing I do when I wake up is think of 100 things I'm grateful for.
Oh, beautiful.
And I actually call them appreciations, not gratitudes, because when I was a kid, I was often told to be grateful for things I wasn't grateful for. And I do another 100 before I go to sleep.
Wow.
Everything.
Talk about progress for the soul. That's amazing. That, to me, that's like a soul prescription right there. I'm going to call that Soul RX and underline it by Maggy Whitehouse. Maggy Whitehouse's soul prescription is 100. What did you call it? Not gratitudes, but appreciation.
Things you appreciate.
Yes, 100 appreciations in the morning, 100 appreciations at night. That will shift you like no other, I'm sure. I can guarantee that.
It really does. And some days it was so hard, and you had to go things like a cup of tea.
Yes, the little things.
My dog jumping on the bed, or a kiss from my husband. Simple things. And I so often get people saying, I can't think of enough. I can't possibly think of 100. And I go, well, this is the problem. Yeah. This is actually the problem. This is the block, that you can't think of 100 things in your life that you appreciate. Let's work with this, because you've got 5 senses. You can see, you can hear, you can taste, you can smell, you can touch. Right, give me 10 things you like to taste, 10 things you like to look at, 10 things you like to hear, 10 things you like to touch, 10 things you like to smell. And you're on 50.
Right.
So, and I've actually put 100 appreciations in the book, so people can't go, I can't think of 100 appreciations.
I love that. In fact, I talk about in some of my blogs, I talk about a thankful treasure hunt, or a gratitude treasure hunt.
Oh, that's nice. So, a treasure hunt. Yes.
Yeah. And it can even be as simple as, I love the red rose that I'm seeing. Or if you're in your car, I love Teslas. So I love the Tesla in front of me. You know what I mean? Just it's silly things that you may think or somebody else may think are silly, but really it's just being in that energy of thankfulness that will shift your energy. And also I just as an aside for my audience, those who don't know what EFT, the modality of EFT is emotional freedom tapping. So what happens when you do that, and it shifts a lot of different things, is you are tapping on different meridians of the body, and it really helps with shifting with the trauma body, the pain body, different woundings. And I've done it, and Maggie, as she said, she's done it. Many people I know have done it, and it's actually really helped with the wounding. It's helped with even physical ailments. So just wanted to put that in there for people who didn't know what EFT is. And there's a ton of different EFT videos on YouTube if you wanted to look at exactly what that is and how you can implement that. A lot of people use it for addictions and overcoming addictions as well.
Yes.
So
no, it's a very useful tool. But it's always worth saying that every now and then there is nothing that will work. There is, every now and then, moving on, going to the other world is exactly what's right for you. And the soul will only take you when it's right. But it's really hard sometimes. There was a time at which I thought, my God, I don't know if I am going to make it. And I have to make peace with this aspect too. And that was actually very valuable work too. And sort of thinking, okay, how many people am I going to meet again? How many people do I want to meet again? And you know, at my age, there's quite a queue up there I'd like to meet again, and a lot of dogs.
That's a really good point. I think just in being okay with that and surrendering was probably healing in and of itself.
I think so. I actually can pinpoint the moment that I believe that I started to heal. I was very ill. I couldn't walk very far. I had fluid build up in the lungs, and was having to have them drained every day. And I couldn't really do anything but sit in the living room and look at the birds on the bird feeders, which my husband was filling up for me. And there was a moment when I just realized that was enough.
Wow.
That was enough. That was contentment. Just sit and watch the birds. And it was just, and the other aspect of it was that I did a ridiculous pilgrimage to Albuquerque to see Richard Rohr for the first time ever. And this was at the time I could hardly walk. I could walk 100 yards. That was the maximum I could do because I just didn't have the breath. Obviously, I couldn't get any travel insurance, but I did this utterly stupid thing of flying the cheapest way, because I hadn't got any cash at the time, to Albuquerque to study with Richard. And I think that pilgrimage was part of it too, which was I damn well will not die. I damn well will live to praise the damn Lord my God.
Oh, isn't New Mexico gorgeous?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have family there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. How neat for you to make that pilgrimage for your soul.
It was extraordinary. And I was just helped all the way. And I think that's the big message of this book, is how to get out of your own way, because grace is a given. That's something I have learned. It's very hot here, which is why I keep having to push my specs back up, because grace is given. We are given chi or grace or what you want all the time, every day. But we really block it with our thoughts, our emotions, our angers, our blame, our resentments, our jealousy. And I think blame is one of the things that's coming up an awful lot at the moment. You know, the governments aren't doing the right thing with the pandemic, and we're not doing the right thing with Brexit, and we're not doing this, and they should have done this, and they should have done that. And the more I study the Bible, the more I think that, apart from the fact that original sin does not exist in Judaism, so Jesus could never have heard of it. It was invented by St. Augustine in the 3rd century, and then promulgated by St. Anselm in the 12th century, the idea of punitory substitutionary atonement, and that humanity was so bad that God had to send his own son down to kill him to reprieve us. That only came up in the 12th century. It's not in the Bible. It's not there. but if you look at the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden in Eden, if you read between the lines and look at the aspects of the divine and how it's speaking to them, the problem's not the disobeying. Anyone knows that two children told not to do one specific thing when you leave the room, they're going to do that thing. They're absolutely going to do that thing. The problem was they blamed. Adam blamed Eve, and Eve blamed the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's fine, you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but the trouble is we're still eating all the time, which is, you're evil, I'm good. That's evil, that's good. We judge. And as soon as you set up judgment, you swell one side of the tree of life and you start blocking your soul, and it's the soul that's receiving the grace.
That's a good point, to think about how we keep pointing the finger outward, the blame outward to the external. And even if you take a look at what's going on today, who do we blame? Politicians. Who do we blame? Everything out there. You know, protesters, politicians, different movements. As to why the world is, you know, imploding on itself. But really, and I've said this probably in almost every episode of Guided, the external is a reflection of the internal, you know, of our internal landscape. So really, the true message is we need to get right with ourselves and divinity, and realize the divinity within ourselves. And like you said, to your point, get out of our own way, understand what are the blocks within ourselves. What are we blocking? Why are we blocking the beautiful divinity and the streaming inspiration that we could have, you know? So it's very
it's a big issue because we're trained.
Yeah.
We're trained to judge, we're trained to block, we're trained not to believe, and we are so secular now, apart from so much fundamentalism, and fundamentalism is law over love. Mm-hmm. And anytime any Christian fundamentalist talks to me, I just say, but surely Jesus was love over law, every time.
Yeah, spirit over law, love over law.
Love over law. Mm-hmm. Love the stranger, love your enemy, pray for those who hate you. And there's, it's so clear. And Christianity did very well up until the 3rd century, and then it was adopted by Rome and became an imperial religion of war. Yeah. And Richard Rohr has this wonderful phrase. He sort of says he thinks Christianity is a great idea. Unfortunately, it's only in the kindergarten at the moment.
Yeah. And I mean, even with the vote with the Nicene Creed of what deity is, I mean, that you can tell was to appease royalty, and, you know, it was made up. So, you know, we know it was manipulated in many ways. No.
Absolutely. And also, but it's all still there. The hope and the love and the joy is actually there. My best friend Adam is Jewish, and he and I sit and discuss this kind of thing for hours. It's wonderful because he teaches me about the fact that there's no such thing as original sin in Judaism, and I take him through the Gospels and look at this stuff, and we just go, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, we'll say it's exactly the same, isn't it?
Yes.
And Buddhism, it's all the same. It's just different roads to Rome. And unfortunately, Rome was the problem for a lot of us.
I know. I usually say different roads to heaven. Yeah, but getting back to Kabbalah and the tree of life, or Jacob's ladder, whatever you want to say or how you want to interpret it. Basically,
tree of life.
Yes. You know, basically the map to ascension, so to speak, or to divinity. Tell us a little bit about, and you explain this in your book, you get really deep and I love it, but explain a little bit about the lower and the upper and the different cat flaps, and maybe how we're blocking different areas, because it goes in kind of a zigzag, and if we can make it practical. And how can we know if we're blocking? Yeah, and how do we know if we're blocking one? Like, for instance, say somebody has a brain tumor, or maybe somebody is going through a cancer, like you. were you able to identify, okay, this is where there's a block, and Kabbalah helped me figure it out?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, with the brain tumor, there's always going to be something at that level, because
Right.
this could be a human being, if you see what I mean. It
Right.
could be head, shoulders, arms, hips, feet. It could be. But that one diagram just pulls together all the aspects of the human psyche. That diagram there is of the human psyche. This here is the human body, this is the psyche, this is the spirit, and that is the divine. And we're taught that all humanity and all creation lives in that top world before it's born and after it dies. And so our roots are in heaven. It's like the tree is upside down, the roots are in heaven. So everything can flow down to us if we don't put the blocks onto it. But we frequently have a block here, which is the ego, which is the part of us that is affected by the outside world. So it feels that the world is ruling it. It's about, everything in that one is about, what do people think about me?
Yes.
Whereas the true self is, what do I think about me and what do I think about people? And then beyond that in the soul, you just go, what is my purpose? What can I do here? But each aspect of the tree, a sephira, a circle, a Hebrew is sephira, has an aspect of your psyche. And in the soul, it's a discernment, or it's judgment, negative, it can be judgment or discernment or discipline or strength. And this is loving kindness. And I can only really talk with any kind of authority on experience, only with experience about cancer. Cancer is located in this triad here.
Oh.
And it comes from overgiving, overdoing, and compensating. And cancer people are nearly always nice people, and quite often they have underlying resentments. And so what's happened is that this part of them has swollen up because the cancer people are the ones who always put the chairs out for everybody else, and do the washing up, because we've been trained. I mean, I am generalizing. Of course, there are other reasons for cancer. Of course, there's environmental, there's pollutions, all sorts of things, but I can only talk about my own experience. But if you get too overdoing, too overgiving, too active, too compensatory, what happens is that this side starts to get grumbly and moany, and you can start getting, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I need to rest, I haven't got time to rest, I'm not going to rest, I've got to look after other people. And so these two side triads sort of swell up and press in on the true self and make it even less difficult for you to hold to yourself and to open up to grace. And that's why chemotherapy or surgery will work, because this is a massive yes and that is a massive no.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And surgery and chemotherapy are on the left side of the tree. So something has to happen to stop you.
Right. Yes. In fact, talk about the different sides. So you have the left side. Is that the receiving?
The left side is known as the feminine side. It's the receptive. It's the side that will go yes or no. I will receive this or I won't. And the right hand side is the active one.
Yeah.
And the right hand side is all about inspiration and fun and expansion. And the whole world is overbalanced on that side right now. That
and
side is
forward.
masculine, and it represents toxic patriarchy.
Yes.
This side for us at the moment is toxic yin, toxic matriarchy, because you can't have a patriarchy without full support from the women.
Right. That's so interesting.
It's not about men and women, it's about male and female, but the female is always going to be more contemplative, more receptive. If you think about sperm and egg, it receives the sperm and then it will grow. And the whole thing about the tree is every sephira is both receptive and active, and the idea is that grace flows down into one and then flows to another and then flows to another. And what happens is that somewhere along the line the flow stops, whether that's something that you've done or something that the environment's done to you, or a combination of the two, or whether it's something you set up before you even came down. And I often say to people who come and ask me about serious diseases, I will always start off by saying, if it's genetic, you have my absolute, utter admiration. because you chose to come down and deal with this. And that is magnificent, because I didn't have the guts.
Wow.
You know, which is a different way from looking at it, because quite often people will talk about karma, the idea that you might come down with a disease because you were bad in a previous life. And I don't think it's like that at all. I think every human being has to experience everything to become full. The idea of Kabbalah is that every human being will get to the level of messianic contact with the divine. Every human being will become Christed. And that's going to take generation after generation after generation. You know, we're only in the first throes of this experiment at the moment. So I tend to think that every human being is going to experience everything, which means if I haven't already been, I will be a murderer and a rapist. And I will also be murdered and raped. That doesn't mean make it right, but unless you've experienced all of it, then you won't be able to heal all of it or move through all of it. So I think with people, when people choose to come down for what I call a pay off your credit card life, because karma's good as well as bad. And I think you sort of juggle when you've been down a few times, you get a certain amount of choice, which is why you get the astrology you do and the parents you do. And you can sort of look at your chips, if you like, if you want to use a gambling analogy, and sort of say, okay, I've got 50 negatives and 12 positives here. I can pay off my debt over 16 lifetimes, or I can do it in one. And if you do it in one, you're going to choose a really, what other people will call a challenging life, and you deserve all the respect of the planet for that.
Right.
Because I know I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Does that help a lot? Because
it does.
Because
It does. And also, I was thinking as you were talking about that, I think some people have even volunteered to take some of their familial karma in their lineage.
Yeah.
And that can be very difficult.
Oh, yeah. Well, Susie the shaman said to me, you don't have physical children, do you? And I went, no, I have stepchildren and an adopted child. I don't have physical children. And she said, if you had had children, you would not have this disease, because this curse has been in the matriarchal line of your family for a long time. And each mother has passed it to her daughter, and each daughter has passed it on. It's been a hot potato.
Wow.
She said, was there ever any time in your life when you said this stops here? And I said, yeah. That was the day I chose not to have children, because I am fertile. Well, I was fertile. I'm past the menopause now. But I actually knew that I wasn't balanced enough or well enough to have children. And I chose not to. And Susie said that was the point at which you stopped that curse and said, this stops here. So it came out.
Wow, that's such...
what do I know? This is all I've told, but I can only give you my experience.
That's so insightful, though. That's so insightful. Very fascinating. But going back to that little triad that you were talking about as far as the cancer, I think, people who have resentments or inner anger, and they're not balanced and they don't have the boundaries, it can manifest into that cancer, like you said. So that's so interesting. So interesting that if we don't see that and balance it ourselves.
Yeah, well, the right hand tree is constant expansion. It has to be balanced by the left hand, which is constant contraction. So if you're too far over the left hand side tree, you might have heart issues. If you're too far over on the right hand of the tree, you're most likely to get some form of rolling chronic disease like a cancer, because it's just telling you you're not balanced on the center. One of my homeopaths said to me that your disease is definitely all disease, because it manifested down on the central column. But I'm pretty sure that it was an imbalance between those two there. But it was definitely a cancer. Cancer, I would say, always is something to do with the soul, something to do with not being taught how to experience joy at the level of the soul. But fortunately, you can teach yourself.
Yes. So fascinating. So one of the reasons I ask about a brain tumor is because I actually had two last year, and now I took another MRI and I have one. So my theory is either one was removed or they joined forces. I don't know. So I'm hoping that the first is the case. So I'm thinking, like, symbolically, as I pray and think about it, either I'm not wanting, my subconscious or something is not wanting to see something, and so it's blocking some type of third eye vision, and that's why
Where is it?
It's on my pituitary gland, which is
Right,
basically
okay.
the pineal, which is like the third eye in a
Yeah,
way, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, what am I not wanting to see? You know what I mean? I keep asking spirit that, you
Are you
know?
seeing too much? Are you doing too much? Are you doing too
Yes.
much for other people and not enough for yourself?
Possibly, possibly. So, so I keep asking the question, and because I spiritually, I see a lot. I see quite a bit. I get spiritual downloads all the time. And so I'm
Right.
thinking, this is so fascinating to me. And so, you know, I just, it's interesting. It's all interesting to me.
I'm so glad you're interested. But the first thing to say to absolutely anybody with anything like that is you haven't done anything wrong. You do not
Right.
deserve to have a disease. It's
No.
just something that's worked its way through and worked its way up. And are you well?
I mean, for the most part, yes. I mean, you know, you have your days where you're like fatigued or something. And
Mm.
so I feel like I am so much better than I was last year. Last year, I was down for the count, running a fever for 2 months. It was crazy. So I know I needed to get out of a situation, which I did. So I feel like things have definitely improved.
It sounds like things are improving beautifully.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
really, again, I'm not a medical doctor. If you and I were sitting in a room with a cup of tea, and we could talk for hours, and maybe
Right.
something would work through, and I'd probably send you to Susie and to Kathy because I'm not as good at either as they are. But I would say certainly with the brain, it's going to be something between matching inspiration and understanding.
Yes. Yeah. When I was reading your book last night, I kept thinking
Yeah,
right there. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Well, God bless you. May you be totally blessed and filled with grace.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel that. I absolutely feel that. And I feel the divine all around me. And that's one of the things I love, and the gratitude that I feel that on a daily basis I can shift from one energy to another. And like I mentioned, when I feel anxious at all, shift into gratitude. I love that.
Marvelous.
So,
Well,
yeah.
the thing about having a difficult diagnosis is it makes you realize you do want to live.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much to do. There's so
Mm,
much to do. So
yes,
this is a beautiful, beautiful life. And I think Kabbalah is such a beautiful tool. And
thank you. It is a
so,
tool. That's
yeah,
all it is. It is a tool. It. God bless the Jewish nation for holding it safe. This amazing tool. The cat's out of the bag now, and the cat flap is open, and all that. But it is absolutely wonderful because it is just such an ancient perennial tradition, and you don't have to be of any religion to study it. You can study it. It is wise to have some concept of the idea that there might be a transcendent divinity as well as an immanent divinity. Um, but for me, the great healing of it for me was it helped me understand the teachings of Jesus. It helped me understand the Bible, and my basic job is to help other people damaged by Christianity to say, "Yep, I get that. That's utter rubbish. That's awful. I'm really sorry. Now, do you want to get into this?" Because you've got two choices really. If you've got a real problem with religion, you can throw it out the window and just quietly hate it, or you can get down and dirty and sort it out. And I was awkward. I got down and dirty and sorted it out.
yeah. And you know, one of the things that's so beautiful that you bring up in your book, if you break down the word religion, you know, and the true meaning of the word religion, it actually means to bind, and ligaments actually.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really bringing and binding together with divinity. But the thing is, like you said, when Rome got a hold of it, it took on a very different meaning, a destructive meaning, to tear apart.
Yeah.
And so because of
and
that,
bound to a certain structure, you have to be bound to this religion, as opposed to, I bind unto myself this day the strong power of the Trinity, which is part of St. Patrick's Lorica. I bind unto myself grace, God. I follow the path. This is me, this is God. We're in constant communication. That flap is open.
Yes.
Yeah.
That being bound to divinity, that is true religion. And that's the meaning of that word, the true meaning of that word, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful that you really bring that out in your book. And so,
thank you.
yeah.
And also, I think one of the most important things to understand about the Bible is that there are 10 different names for God in the Hebrew. They all have the 10 aspects of the tree of life, but the creatrix of the universe was the feminine.
Beautiful.
You know, so God the feminine is in there. I wrote another book years ago called A Woman's Worth, the divine feminine in the Hebrew Bible. And you actually see the development of the human soul through the stories of the women, not the men, the women. And chronologically, they just show working from survival to ego, to finding out your true self, to finding out the work of your soul. And they're extraordinary. They're incredible stories. But we just read them literally, but in fact, we're meant to read them allegorically, metaphysically, and mystically, as in, what's the message here? How does this relate to my life right now? And how does this relate to the development of the whole of humanity? Because Kabbalah ultimately teaches that God is having a baby. And all of creation are cells in that baby. And the baby cannot be born until every single one of us is perfected. And every single one of us will perfect.
I like the way you put that.
Another.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, it will happen. It will have lots of little sicknesses and illnesses and tantrums along the way. But Kabbalah teaches that humanity as a species is approximately 2 years old.
Oh, very young.
Currently having tantrums and breaking our toys.
Yeah, toddlers.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been such a lovely conversation, Maggie. Thank you so much for joining me on Guided.
Well, thank you so much for asking me and nailing me to the mast and asking me good, strong questions. Wow, I forgot I made some decent answers.
Oh, yes, absolutely beautiful. Anything else you'd like to add before we close? And also, where can we find you?
Oh, just Google me. If you spell my name with the Y, Maggy, Whitehouse, Google me, you'll find me on Wikipedia, my website, my blogs, my YouTube channels. So if you want to find me, you can find me. I'm also on social media, and eventually I'll be back on the comedy circuit with any luck. But I do love that. I do. It's a very atheistic place, the comedy circuit, and it's quite anti-theistic in ways. So it's really nice to turn up in the dog collar and extract the Archangel Michael out of the Bible, but with some knowledge, because quite often, apart from that, you get to sit with people in the green room, and every now and then they'll say, "Would you pray for my grandma?"
Oh, yeah.
You know, or something like that. So you carry your church with you, and the whole idea of the church is lift hearts, just be there. But also huge amounts of self-care, huge. And the one recommendation I would give to absolutely anybody who thinks they may need healing, apart from the 100 affirmations a day, is, for God's sake, take 1 day off a week. That is the day the Sabbath was made for humanity. That is the day to cut off the news, to cut off the internet, and sit and listen. Because you have got guardian angel up there, you've got guidance up there, you've got the Holy Spirit, and they're just sitting there going, knit one, purl one. Is she going to listen? No, she's not going to listen today. Knit one, is she going to listen? No, she's not going to listen today. And they are so trying to get through to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So trying to get through to us, and answers are just flowing. And if we could just take a day a week, 1 day a week to listen.
Such good advice. Such good advice. Yes.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree. Maggie, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And from the UK, I hope that you have just a tremendous week. And it was just absolutely so gorgeous to have you and this experience with you. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I so love talking with people from North America because you're so polite and so kind, whereas British folks tend to go, oh, thanks for being on. Bye.
Well, yes, it's been lovely. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.